So they feel like they're part of the team too. The classic example was, I think it was JFK was at NASA, ran into a janitor in the hallway and asked the janitor, what are you doing? And what do you do? And the janitor says, well, I'm helping to put a man on the moon.
Right.
Right. That's what you want, right? You want to get people attached to what those big goals are,
Right.
because that's what we care about, right? As we as human beings, like, okay, the money's great, I need it to pay the bills and all that stuff. But where I really get like personal satisfaction, self-actualization, if you will, is through accomplishment and through being a part of something that's bigger than yourself
Yeah.
and feeling that every day. And if you can create that kind of culture in your business, one, you're going to be a lot happier. You're going to be
Right.
surrounded by much happier people.
Welcome to Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help manufacturing executives command the front and win the floor. I'm Richard Walsh, creator of the Sharpened Impact methodology, and I've spent decades helping leaders transform frontline teams, unlock hidden profit, and capture capacity they didn't even know they had. If you want to see where your leadership gaps are costing you and how to fix them, head over to grittolead.com and run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator today. Let's sharpen your edge and get started. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. Rich Smith is with us today. And Rich, no one knows Rich as well as Rich. So, Rich, I need the backstory. Bring us up to speed so we can get into the conversation.
Yeah, sure thing. So first off, thanks for having me on today. I really, really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we'll have. Yeah, so a little bit about me. I run a business called the Rich M. Smith Growth Studio. We work with companies of all sizes, usually privately held organizations, sometimes public companies, but we find that a lot of organizations get kind of stuck from a revenue growth perspective, and they need a reset. And in order to retool or maybe build for the first time a predictable revenue generation engine that they can scale and that they have confidence in month after month. Not only, they have confidence, but typically they're helps build confidence with their board, investors, possible buyers for the company if you're looking to exit. And, so what we do is we do a gap analysis. We go through and determine what's the difference between what you're currently doing and where you would really like to be. And we also get into, redoing your brand messaging and all of that. So that's kind of what I do. I don't want to turn this into a monologue, a little bit about who I am. So I've been the chief marketing officer of 7 different companies over the last 25 years. Everything from Fortune 500 financial services to healthcare to privately held data company that, about 125 people that I helped get to a 9-figure exit. So, I've kind of covered a pretty wide range of industries and yeah, so today I trying to use that experience that I gained, over all those years and really have a bigger impact by working with lots of companies at once.
I love it. I love it. So, there's a word that stood out to me. Okay. And it's predictable. Predictability in your business, in your revenue. That is the most understated thing. Okay. I think so many
Yeah.
companies, when I work with them and what I do now in manufacturing, it's like that's a desire. Okay. They don't even realize it, but they don't know how to get to it. How do you get to predictability? That is a big thing. And we can spend a little bit of time talking about it, but I just wanted to bring that up before I forgot. When I
Now,
hear that, I'm like, dude, you're doing that. That's great. Let's talk about that. That's a biggie.
yeah, you're absolutely right, and great to double click on that topic a little bit. I'm glad you picked that up. It, you know, I do some investing as well. I'm an angel investor, and I talk to other investors, venture capital people, private equity people, and they will all say, if you're looking to get an exit for your company, and all of those types, they always say like the one of the most important things is how well do we know, what's the level of certainty that we have that your revenue projections are going to come true? Because, when someone's buying your company or investing in your company, that's basically what they're buying is a future revenue stream, future
Right.
income stream, right? And so if you're able to show them that here's our model, here's how we predict revenue, here's what we think is going to close in the next 90 days, right? I'm giving you a hypothetical
Right.
example, and you hit that target, an investor is going to look at that and say, okay, this is a solid business. They have a system. They're able to generate revenue. The quality of their revenue is good because it's predictable. They say that they're going to do certain things and then they hit those targets. Like that stuff really makes a big difference in whether someone will buy your company at all or invest in your company at all, or what kind of multiple they give you, because the more predictable and the more you're able to demonstrate that you can make revenue predictions and hit those revenue predictions, the greater the confidence they're going to have in your business and its future prospects.
Yeah, it definitely gets you a higher valuation. I think the thing, one of the things like you're talking about is really these companies have to track these metrics. They have to show they've done it repeatedly. It's great to, and I don't mean this is bad, but you get you get queued up for the sale, okay, because you all of a sudden you decide you want to sell your business, and like in 90 days, like, well, you're not going to get much. Okay, you're certainly
Yeah.
going to leave a lot on the table. I'll say that. Now it's all going to go back to how you're running your business, right? So, do you find, Rich, that if you're brought in for this and they want to exit, it's usually a 2 to 3, 4-ish year process to really prep them to be ready for an adequate, lucrative,
Yeah.
if you will, sale of the business?
Yeah, it really depends on where the business is, in its life cycle to determine to figure that out. It's funny, I was sitting here listening to you talk. Um, Most of the CEOs or founders that I talk to, if you ask them, well, when are they planning to exit? They almost always say 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And you ask them a year later, they'll say 3 to 5 years. You ask them three
Mhm.
years later, they'll say 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is, they haven't really figured out how to work backwards from that end state that they're really interested in to where they are today. And that's one of the things that we do. Now, yes, we focus a lot on strategy around marketing and sales and revenue generation, but we also focus on, just kind of business strategy as well, too. And I usually advise a CEO to, you know, write the end of the movie first, right? Write whatever happily ever after, right off into the sunset, ending, right? And then let's work backwards to, okay, well, what does it take to make that ending possible with your company? All right, how much revenue would you need to have? What would the likely multiple be in your industry, right? Okay, that tells us a lot about where you need to get to in order to hit your dream. And then it's just a matter of taking however much time, what your time frame window is, and chunking it up between that end state and where we are today. And we may find that 3 years isn't enough, when you go through that
Right.
process. You would say, like, I think it's going to take us 4 to get there. That's okay. But now at least you have a roadmap that's got some certainty around it that you can begin to build shorter term objectives that are all aligned with that end state that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, I think it really is that kind of deer in the headlights, hamster wheel combination, that constant 3 to 5 years, because they don't know where to begin. And I do like you do, um, always start with an exit strategy. I tell people there's two good times to do it. The first and best time is before you begin your business,
Hmm.
and the second one is today.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
those are the two times you're going
Yeah.
to work on this. Okay, because if you can do that, like you said, and I keep it simple too in the beginning, just how long, how long you want to do this, and how much you want to get out. Okay, because those are the two basic numbers you're looking for, anyways. So if you're saying 10 years, $10 million, great. Now let's extrapolate backwards. What does it take? When do you hire the first person? Blah, blah, blah. Like you're saying, I think from an exit standpoint too, when you're coming in that 3 to 5 years, like you said, I do a bit in private equity too. And I look at this and it keeps extending. It used to be 3 to 5. Now it's 5 to 7.
Mm,
Okay. And it's like, and everyone's trying to figure out why. And it's like, well, it's really, there's execution issues, right? It's really, how is the, I deal primarily in manufacturing, but it's like, how are they actually operating? There's a lot of things that go on and things that people can't measure that have caused these delays because they don't also know how to correct them, right? That's the issue. Like you bring someone like you in, Rich, you are coming with a plan, right? Like obviously you're going to
yeah.
talk to but you have a general idea. Is it, and you can totally tell me I'm crazy. You come in with a general idea, then you plug in the specifics to that company. I mean, that's a 30,000 foot view, but am I on pace
Yeah.
there?
Look, yeah, I said earlier, I've worked in a lot of different industries, both directly as a chief marketing officer. I've also been in management consulting for a while and have consulted with all kinds of companies, manufacturing and
Right.
as well as ones in, the industries that I spent a lot of time working in myself. And yeah, the common threads it's the same principles, right?
Yep.
It's the same principles applied over and over and over again with different specifics. A question that I often get when I talk to a CEO for the first time is they'll say something like, well, should we be doing more on Facebook? Should we be doing more to drive paid search traffic or invest in SEO or launch a podcast? Or should we go to more trade shows? And my smart answer to that question is always, well, like maybe. I mean, show me your strategy first, and
Mhm.
then I'll tell you if you're picking the right tactics because everybody's natural reaction is, we're human beings, we want to do something, right? So our natural reaction is want to jump to tactics first without actually putting any
Right.
strategic thought in place. So one of the things that we do is we stop that kind of spray and pray marketing, right? Like no random acts of marketing.
Right.
We're gonna build a strategy. We're gonna look at what you're doing now. We're going to look at what your strategy is. If we need to work on that, let's work on that. Get the strategic foundation in place, which includes things like understanding your competition, understanding, get how well do you really know your target customer? How well have you defined who they are, where they buy, how do they buy products or services like the one that you're selling, right?
Mhm.
These are the kinds of things that, need to be gathered first, then you can put a sound strategy in place, and then the strategy will dictate the tactics. The
Right.
last part, actually, which I know a lot of people really struggle with, and I think that's the hardest, that's actually the easiest. The hard part is doing the strategy work and getting that right, right? And putting the effort in there. And that's what a lot of people avoid because it takes a lot of
It's
work and it feels like you're not doing
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. And I'm big on the strategic aspect, right? We do strategic visions, right? 18 and 24 month segments, right? We'll do stuff like that. Like, where you going? You don't need to think about 5 years because you don't know what's happening next month. Okay. Like, you want to go out 5 years and everything changes, so fast now. But I think the strategic component is so important, like you said, versus tactical. They're both needed, right? And I always tell people you need generals in the tent looking at the whole board, and you need my ground pounders out front for the tactical, right? To execute different battles. And until you understand the big picture, it's hard to go do battles,
Hmm.
because there's no sense of what is winning. What does winning
Right.
look like? What is success? And I always tell people, even people in the company, it's success in the day, the week, the month, the quarter, the year. They need to know how to win. And if you haven't built a strategy for winning, because that's what you're doing, your
Hmm.
strategy is to win. And like, how are people supposed to conduct themselves? Like you said, you'll waste all this time on this ridiculous social media because you think it's a thing. And I'll tell you, I've eliminated almost virtually all of mine over years. And two things, I'm much happier, okay, because I
Mm,
don't look at any of that stuff. But secondly, I'm super targeted. I had to
yeah,
finally learn what used to never work is the only thing that works now.
yeah.
So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I run into a lot is, organizations, because of this tendency to want to jump to tactics, they end up trying a little bit of a lot of things. So let's put a little bit into trade shows. Let's put a little bit into social. Let's put a little bit into our website and SEO. Let's put a little bit into content. Let's put a little bit into LinkedIn, a little bit into Facebook, a little bit into Twitter, a little bit into Instagram, right? And the problem with that is like, hey, you might get lucky and one of them might hit.
Right.
But what's more likely to happen is nothing.
You're getting a whole lot of nothing,
A whole lot of
a
nothing across
giant
the whole
pile of
board
nothing.
because you haven't gone deep enough
Right.
in any one place to even have anything that you could measure and you could say either good or bad, right? Maybe it didn't work. Okay, learning what doesn't work is sometimes just as valuable as learning what does work, so you
Right.
don't waste more time and money and effort on it. But if you don't put enough resource against a particular activity, you don't ever get to any kind of scale that gives you measurable results. And so I see that a lot. And organizations like, well, nothing's working. I'm like, okay, well, that's because you haven't really picked a lane to start in, right? And you're totally right. Like one of the answers to this question is get more focused.
Right.
Right. Get more focused on where are your target customers, where are they most likely to buy, and really laser in on that. And then look, if you start killing it in that channel, then maybe it's time to add another one. Yeah, I look at it this way. There are, particularly when I'm talking to companies that are starting out or they're launching a new product or going into a new market, there's a continuum that all buyers go through. And, over here on this side is we don't even know who you are, and we don't know that we need what you sell.
Right.
All the way down to the other end of the spectrum, which is we have a burning need to buy the kind of product and service you sell, and we have our credit card or a checkbook in hand and we're ready to buy. So when you're starting out, you don't want to be over here, like
Nope.
in trying this awareness building stuff, because that's super expensive and takes a long time. You want to find the buyers that are over here that are ready to buy. So you want to focus on tactics that are catching people at that moment. And that's where you start to invest. Because if you start to invest over here, you're going to burn a lot of
Yeah.
cash and it's going to take a lot of time and you're just really you may never get there. That's
Mhm.
the land where Coca-Cola and McDonald's and the massive CPG brands play in that arena, and it's not right for any organization starting out, and typically almost never right for a B2B company.
Yeah. It's kind of like your exit strategy. You're going to work backwards. Go where you need that low hanging fruit. Okay. It's part
Yeah.
of creating sustainability, generating income. You got to move that. But like you said a little bit earlier, people aren't spending the time to identify their ICP, their ideal client profile, like in depth. I have multiple worksheets for them, right? There's multiple, like keep going, keep going, keep going. You need to know them in the proverbial better than they know themselves, and then once you understand that, and that's what I'll do a lot of companies, Rich, is I'll elevate their pricing just through that exercise. Now
Hmm.
that you understand who you actually serve, you're way undercharging. Okay, because you're trying to do it with everyone. I go, but and now we reduced your workload by 2/3. Okay, and increased your profit margins by 2/3. Okay, that's a pretty good exchange, right? And also
Hmm.
you're working less and making more. Go figure, right? But now you
Yeah.
understand who you serve and how you serve them the best. That warrants that increased price, right? So it's not like complicated, But it's interesting. I like to get your kind of viewpoint on this and why no one sees this. It's like so much work to get them to like, you get it? Like, would you like to do a third of the work and make the same more money? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, that's
Yeah,
fine. But
yeah.
part of the,
It definitely is a you nailed the dynamic. I mean, I've seen that a lot where, because price is a signal,
right,
right? It's a signal to the market. And, we all have this cognitive bias that says expensive equals good,
right,
right? Like you could go buy a Volkswagen Touareg, right? Or you could go buy a Porsche Cayenne. They're basically the same vehicle, right? The chassis are the same, a lot of the internal parts are the same, right? They both get you from A to B same way. But like, well, so why would someone spend the money on a Porsche and not, why would they spend that kind of money on a Porsche and not on a Volkswagen? And, there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in
right,
there, but
right,
part of it is this fact that, okay, well, this is really expensive, so it must be great,
right.
right?
Well, let me take it another layer deeper on the same principle. So take that same Porsche Cayenne. Okay, there it is. And they're, $87,000 or whatever now. I don't know what they are, but let's call them 87,000. And then, so you've got the guy who wants to pay 87,000 to drive the Porsche Cayenne. Now you have another guy who got the same car, and I'm going to go extremes. I like to work in the absurd. Okay. And got it for $500. Okay. Exact same car, operate, everything's the same. Okay. I said, are they the same customer? How is one going to treat that Cayenne compared to the other? Okay. He's going to park on the
Yeah.
grass on the part halfway up the curb, whatever, he doesn't care. Right. And I would have people literally, Rich, argue with me they're the same people. I go, they're not. It's just, I don't even know how you can think that. And even if it was 87,000 compared to 40,000, same car, there's a difference, right? I mean, get in all that kind of stuff. But the point is
Yeah.
like understanding who the buyer is, what they actually value, because I always say that whatever the price of the car, if it's $30,000 and I really want the car, doesn't mean that if it was $30,300, I wouldn't buy it, right? It's like
Right.
it's not based on that's not my ultimate budget, right? There's a greater value on more things than the monetary. From the new car smell to how I look in this thing to the color of it, how it handles, what all those things are what you're buying, not the dollar amount. And people have a
Yeah.
real hard time understanding that concept from the business aspect, which is unusual. But again, you don't understand, features, benefits, all that kind of stuff we could get into. But I think it's important to understand that when you're looking at who your client is and how you serve them at the highest level.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a few things there that are really important. One is we tend to think that we're rational actors.
Yes.
And like my undergrad degree was in economics, classical economics, the rational actor theory kind of underpins all of classical economics. But the reality is, we're really more meaning making and feeling machines that think occasionally. And so we tend to make decisions based on emotions and then rationalize them later. And so that is, I think, really key to understanding your target customer and your ideal customer profile, and really getting into, well, what is they might say that they like, want, or need certain things, but the reality is what's driving them is more around the pain and the fear that sits underneath those things.
Yep.
And that's where the emotion comes from. So if you can, really get into the brain of your target buyer and start to understand, well, what are the emotions? What are they feeling around this issue? Maybe you sell projectors, to take to meetings or whatever. And most conference rooms are now wired for AV,
Right.
so this is dating me a little bit, but they used to be like massive boxes,
I
right?
had the
Big,
slide
heavy,
carousels, man. I had the
right?
slide carousel. I click in each one. Yeah, man, I've been doing it a long
And like
time.
a
So I'm with
B2B
you.
buyer, if you went to them and said, look, like we have this great projector, it's got, I'm making numbers up and stuff, like 10,000 lumens and it can project and, blah, 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 and it happens to be small. Okay. Or you can go in and you can sell to the emotion like, hey, aren't you tired of carrying around that heavy freaking thing, like breaking your back and taking it on planes and the car and you gotta unpack it? And how much nicer would it be if you just, had something that's like the size of, a couple decks of cards? Wow. You know, does your buyer really care? Does that buyer really care that much about the technical specs of the
The
product?
lumens.
They do not.
No.
They don't care at all. They just care about the fact that it's easy to carry and it's more convenient for them and it saves them time, right? So that's, and I think when you're trying to engage your target customer, you really have to keep that in mind, particularly at the initial engagement stage, because if you lead with the technical specs, the features, ROI charts, and
Yeah,
and
you're.
that's your sales pitch, and you lead with that stuff, you're going to lose people. You're never even going to get into the conversation. You got to win the heart first
Yeah.
and then win the mind. So at the top of the funnel, it's really about how are we speaking to the emotion that's driving this buying decision and engaging people based on emotion. And then as they get into the sales process, that's when we start to give them all of the technical features and the
Yeah.
ROI charts and all that stuff because now they're ready to hear the rational argument and they want the rational argument to justify the emotion that they're already feeling, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's kind of the I think that's the magic formula to try to get right, in your business and in your sales funnel.
Yeah, it's so good. But I learned a while ago, a guy taught me something really cool about the pain aspect, right? So it was like you have to, just like you're saying, discover their pain. What's their pain? What's really that's the real driving force, right? He goes, and you have to know it. Then you have to sit in it with them and poke the pain a little bit. Okay. They have to know you get, and then you start to make that move, to the solution. And I took it another step further, kind of the open loop. I'll put it, you probably know what that is, but when you talk like you got pain, so I use the doctor's pain chart with the
Hmm.
faces. Okay. So pain is a 10. That's their pain. That's so you see the crumple up face over here on the left. All right. And then in the middle is a padlock. Okay. So you got a padlock there, and you're like, okay, that's the how to fix it. That's in a padlock. And then the next picture is the happy face with the butterflies and the rainbows. Okay. That's the outcome. That's the outcome. Now, the padlock is locked and it stays locked because what people care about is the pain they're in and the outcome when the pain is gone. What is my life going to look like? They don't care about the how to. Okay. They could care less. If I come in and my arm's hanging half off and I'm in a lot of pain because of that, and the doctor comes in and take these two pills and the pain goes away, I don't want the insert to tell me what's inside the pill. Okay, I'm not,
Hmm.
I'm popping those. Give me some water. I'm going to put this down because I want the pain to go away. So I learned that, like that's how you do it. They don't really care, and again, you can tie it to features or whatever. It's a like you said, it completes the sale, but it's not what's important. I want that. I want what this guy got and this guy. See how happy they are. I want to be that.
Hmm.
So just get me to that point. I'm in. If you can get me to that point, I mean, I don't care about the how. So, and that taught me a lot. It saved me a lot of time on stage. Okay.
Hmm.
You don't teach. That's how I translate it. Don't teach people how to do anything because then they think they can do it themselves and they usually can't. And then they're going to be embarrassed to come back. They're never going to come back to you. So you kind of lose people, right? So you give them the pain, give them the outcome. This is what we do. It's great. And like, see you back there, So I just, to me, that was really pivotal in my ability to connect with more clients and more customers and for my businesses to do the same thing.
Yeah, great insight there. And the way I like to think about it is it's kind of like kind of like an iceberg. And floating above the surface is the things that everybody sees. And those are the likes and wants and needs. And that's what people will tell you. But underneath the surface is where the pain and the fear sits. And that's massive, right? And so much of really getting effective messaging together for your target audience is just, it's really wrapped around how well do you understand those pains and how are you able to message to them in a way that differentiates you from everybody else. And then, when you get into the sales process, I like, just like you said, I think it's very effective to really dig into that. Like, okay, yeah, where do you want to get to? Okay, well, how would that feel when you got there? Like, don't be afraid to ask questions about
Right.
that. It's like, how would that make you feel if you accomplished that? Oh, I'd feel incredible. Like it had this big weight off my shoulders, and yeah, and let them feel that, right? And get into that a bit and like soak in the pain a little
Yeah.
bit, right?
Yeah.
And that really is a great way to engage people and get them to, you know, be more interested in what it is that you're selling. Also, I always advise people don't think of it as you're trying to sell something to someone.
Right.
You know, go into the conversation with the mindset of, hey, we're just two people that are going to talk about something and see if there's a way that will be something that we can do that will benefit us both mutually,
Yeah.
right?
I think I always have this 3 word thing I tell people. I go, if you learn these 3 words, it's going to help you a lot in this same process. And here they are. Tell me more. Just when you're coming, just tell me more. Tell me more about that. And we all know people like to talk about themselves.
Hmm.
I know I like to talk about myself. Okay. So I have a podcast. Okay. But when you do that, they will tell you more. It goes back to the old saying, they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And once
Yeah.
you establish that, and that's the digging. The tell me more is the digging. Like you said, how would you feel? That's another one, right? So you start looking at that, and so I want to cross this over to one thing. So there we are, you and I want to see how we can serve you, so we can both benefit. We're doing that face to face, whether it's here on the phone, whatever it is. But now you said messaging. Okay, that's all. That's a different animal
Hmm.
because now you have to take what you could be asking questions and getting feedback that you can respond to at the moment to now this is to me way more complicated, much more difficult is to now put that into a message, into an ad form and do that. So like what's your experience on that, Rich? Because to me that's when I really need a professional.
Yeah, and we have a process that we use. I mean, I call it the brand house process, and it's based in some behavioral science techniques that kind of underpin the process that we go through. But it starts with the things that we've been talking about, really getting sharp on identifying who is your ideal customer or who's the buyer within that, what kind of role, like if you're B2B, what sort of
Right.
roles are you selling to the CEO? Are you selling to the CFO? Are you selling to marketing department? Let's get really tight on who the roles, what are the titles, right? So that's step one. And then, it is a process of going through identifying or what are the pains that the target buyer is experiencing that our product and service would solve. And then you get into, okay, well, how can we message around that in a way that is different from everybody else? Because that's another one of the
That's it.
keys here is you have to differentiate, you have to stand out. I usually tell people, look, if you're coming up with messaging and you can't use a superlative, in other words, best, first, fastest, only, cheapest, proprietary, patented, right? If you can't use a superlative, then you need to go back and start over
Right.
because you've got and people will always say, well, there's nothing that we're the best in the world at. And I was like, well, all right, well, how are you defining the world?
Right.
If
World
you're a
famous chicken.
yeah, if you're a
Okay.
coffee shop in Manhattan, and you're at the 44th and Fifth Avenue. Well, you know what? The world may be that block, and you just need to be the best coffee shop on that block, and
There you
that's your
go.
entire world, right? So how are you to like? I have never failed to find superlatives for a client or a business that I've worked with or worked in. I've never failed to do it, and it's always involved. Hey, how are we defining the world? How are we defining the box that we play in a way that we can be the best at serving the people that are inside that box?
That is a major takeaway. That is how you drill it down. I love that. Your world, not the world. Because I've been to a lot of world famous places that sucked. Okay.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
must not be in their world. I'm passing through. Okay. And everyone says it's going to go, well, that was disappointing, and I leave. But I get it, right? I kind of, you help me just understand something. I'm like, how can you legitimately say that? But to your definition, they just show because I get you probably have to walk every business through that,
hmm
because it's hard because we're really hard on ourselves as owners, as innovators, all this kind of stuff. Like, is it really? Because the world, they're thinking like literally globally,
hmm
6.5 billion people. I'm the greatest.
right,
That's
right,
no small. That's kind of a small claim,
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
you have to understand.
It's funny, when I first talk with a CEO, one of the questions I'll ask is, "Hey, pretend that I'm your target buyer, and tell me why should I buy from you as opposed to buying from a competitor or doing nothing at all?" And you can't say people, service, or quality, or any variation of those things, right? And I often get blank stares back because
Right.
they built their entire messaging around some variation of we have the best people, we have the best service, the best quality, and everybody is saying the same thing. And you'd be amazed at how many times we do competitor research and we come back to the client and we say like, hey, here's what's on your competitors' websites. And you know what? It's exactly the same as what's on your website. You might
Yep.
have changed a few phrases here or there, but you're all saying the same thing.
Yep.
And so if you're all saying the same thing, your target customer can't tell the difference, right?
There's
They
no
don't
value.
know who's,
There's no value. You all should be the
yeah,
same price.
yeah, exactly. Like, all right, I've worked for a lot of banks in my career. Raise your hand if your bank has bad rates and high fees, right? Every bank says we have great rates and fees. They all say it. So, like, as consumers, we completely discount it. We don't even pay attention to that. It goes right over our heads because we
Right.
know it's BS, right? Everybody's saying the same thing. I can't believe it. So I'm going to have to get in and shop and compare products and, use tools that help me do that. And so when I went into financial services or commodities like that, I always tried to come up with something that would let us stand out and let us be different, even when we were, I spent a lot of time in mortgage. Okay, well, mortgage products are pretty much this like a 30-year fixed mortgage that's backed by the government is pretty much the same, no matter where you
Right.
get it from, right? It's the same product. So, how do you come up with a way to differentiate your mortgage company from others? And there's definitely, an art and a science to that, but it comes back to defining, hey, what's the box we're playing in, and how are we going to be the best inside that box? And if we can't say that, then we need to reconfigure the box until we can. And it may start out being like really small, and that's
Mhm.
okay, right? It's better to be like really, really good in a focused area, and then that gives you something to grow from.
Yeah, you reminded me of something. Just last night, I'm having a conversation with some young men. My son, he's home on leave from the Marines, and another buddy his is there, and talking about different things. But what you just reminded me of when you're talking to that CEO, sell me your thing. Okay, reminds me. You know what constraint theory is?
Hmm.
So you're only going to rise to your last level of training. Okay, same principle. Take it over you're only going to rise to your ability. Okay. And you've done whatever it is, quality, delivery, and whatever. Same. That's all you've trained in. That's why that's all you've got. You haven't gone out and bettered your training. You haven't gone, well, what else could I be doing? That differentiator, that's what it's about. Until you can reach that point, okay, but you have to train that. You got to go, well, I like to call it getting punched in the face. Okay, I'm a boxer and stuff, and you can think you're a great boxer till I start punching you in the face. And you're gonna find out thought is helping you. You thinking you are is not going to get you real far. And that goes across the board of whatever industry you're in. You've got to go through those exercises. And I think it's something for, C-suite level, or even, I don't care if they're, supervisors on the line, like you have to put yourself in these positions to challenge yourself. Well, what are we doing? You can't, it's that level of comfortability that destroys you. What is next when you bring in someone like you, Rich, and you're gonna challenge them on that. That's kind of the wake up call, right? How is that received? Do they go, I haven't thought of that? Are they like, well, let's walk through the exercise? Is it a pretty, they get on board pretty quick because it is change. Now we're
Mm.
going to talk about our product differently. Is that a hard transition, or something they kind of, the light bulb just goes off and go, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, I'm sure it's thrilling to have your son back, and
It is.
thank him for his service from all of us. Um, but I think the point around training is a really good one. I find that a lot of the founders that I work with, they are, the product or service that they've built is like their baby.
Right.
And, they had a great idea or what they think is a great idea. They have poured heart and soul, probably a lot of their own money, put their family's financial future at risk. And they've, pumped all of that into building a product or a service. The problem is that they're so deep in product and service, they haven't done the training, to use your analogy, on distribution. And they're not spending their time thinking about distribution. So a product without distribution is going nowhere.
Right.
And that's a lot of what happens, right? Like founders, they'll sell to people they know, right? But then once they've exhausted their friends and connections and the network, and they need to move beyond that, then they get stuck, right? And they get stuck because they haven't done the training on how to build distribution. And that's really, ultimately, and I look at this as an investor as well. Like, I want to talk to the CEO. Hey, how much time are you spending, talking to product and engineering and developing the product? Okay, how much of your time do you spend with sales and marketing and customer success? And if it's not about 50-50, then that's a red flag to me, right? Because
Right.
that tells me that, okay, this CEO doesn't really get the importance of distribution, and chances are pretty good that they're going to hit a plateau and they're not going to recover from it. They're not going to get past it.
Yeah, and thinking about that, what some people will hear when you said that, the 50-50, is, are you telling me I have to be an expert in all these areas? And I always tell them, no, but you certainly need to be familiar with it. Okay, you need to be
Right.
listening to the people you have in the play. You need to go, and because you can be a sounding board, like you can push back, and if they've got the right response, you can confidently let them continue their job, right? But if it's something that's so off the wall, but you have to, like you said, you got to be involved in it. These are kind of like pillars of a business, and if you don't understand how the pillars are constructed, well, then you're going to be at a loss when it comes time to execute.
Yeah, I think the CEO's job really comes down to three things. When you boil it down and really think about it, it's people, vision, and money. It's three things. Get the right people in place, right? Because if you need to be the expert in everything as the founder, chances are pretty good you're the bottleneck, actually,
Yeah. Or
right?
you have a
So
really tiny company.
yeah, you're the bottleneck. So like one of the ways that you scale is by bringing in people who know more about something in a particular area than you do, and being comfortable with that. Bringing in someone who knows more about you. One of the strongest relationships in most companies I run into is the CEO CFO relationship, right? Because the CFO is the guy that's got their numbers and is telling them, everything that's going on within the business. So that's usually a very strong relationship. So most CEOs will understand that. Hey, you wanted to bring in a good CFO, right? Oh yeah, yeah, I need that. I need that. Okay, well, why are you skimping on your chief revenue officer? Why don't you have a chief revenue? Why don't you have a head of marketing? Why don't you have a head of sales? Why are you so involved in all of those things, right? And that, that's a dead giveaway. If you're trying to do it all and be the expert in all those places, you're not going to get very far.
Right. Yeah. Who wants to be? That's my question. I guess I did it on necessity in the beginning of my very first business, and I didn't even do that well. Okay. So now I'm like, I always help business like you need to target who's first, who's the first hire, and then second, and then third, from that aspect. Or if you've established business, like you're saying, okay, it's time for true delegation. You need to decide
Mhm.
who you need. And then secondly, you need to build the lane for that person to operate in. Because I think, Rich, that's where a lot of these CEOs drop the ball. It's called abdicating, right? You'll tell someone to do something, expect them to figure it out. When no, you're this, and this is where you operate. Here's your guardrails. Here's my expectations, right? Here's consequences. Here's all that. Here's how to win day, week, month, quarter,
Mhm.
year. Like, all right, show me what you got, right? Those people can thrive in that environment because they know how to do it. They just don't know your way of doing it, right? And once you just
Right.
tweak that and you drop them in, they can run to the goalpost. They know where it's at. Otherwise, it's a mystery job, and they're getting hit from every direction every day. So I always warn CEOs or startups, founders, even who are established, like you want it, but you don't know how to build it. So you got to be able to understand how to build it. So when you do get the right person, they're able to succeed. No one wants to go and
Right.
be a failure every day. Just saying. Okay. Like if you can teach people how to
Nope.
win every day, every week, every month, every quarter, guess where they're going to show up to every day? The place they can be a winner. Okay. So it really works for retention, so it's just one of those
Yeah, and
things.
that's exactly right. And I think it goes back to one of the things that you were alluding to earlier in the conversation today, and that is alignment
Mhm.
within your team. You can bring in great people, but if you don't have a system or process in place to keep them aligned, there you're going to be wasting a lot of time and energy and effort. And alignment is one of those things that everybody agrees that you need it, but most people don't want to put the effort in to keep
Right.
and maintain it.
Yep.
And yeah, how many, I mean, I know this has been true for me. I'm sure it's true for most of the people in your audience, may be true for you as well. How many organizations have you worked within that you spend, from end of August to mid-December working on next year's plan? You get
Yeah.
the budget,
Mhm.
everything goes to the finance department, everyone blesses the budget. January 1, like, okay, our plan is approved, we're ready to go. Then comes March, and ask anybody, what was in that plan that we wrote? Do you even remember? Right? And nobody does, right? And then
Right.
you're doing another plan, another forecast, no, right? And the problem is because people don't come back to it and revisit it.
That's right.
Right. So I try to coach CEOs and leadership teams that, hey, you need a weekly check-in on this stuff. And there's a particular way to go about doing those weekly check-ins that make them really effective. I'm like, blow up your staff meeting because staff meetings tend to be weather reports, right?
Right.
Everyone comes in and says, I did this, and this last week. Great. Like, the CEO probably that's interesting, but that could be in an email or on a dashboard
Right.
somewhere. It doesn't need
Yep.
to be taking up time in a team meeting. The team meeting should really be about not where we've been, where are we going?
Right.
So we're going here by the end of the first quarter. Okay, are we going to get there? how are we looking today? Does it look like we're on track to get there where we all agreed that we needed to be at the end of the first quarter, or are we not on track? And if we're not on track, let's talk about how to get on track. Like, what can we do to get on track? So the team meeting should really be spent on those kinds of conversations, not on regurgitating, again, I call it a weather report, looking
Mhm.
at what happened last week.
Yeah, and I think it's got to be what's going to keep us from getting there. That's one of my things. Like, okay, now we're going to workshop this. Okay, and if you can't come up with any hurdles, I don't know if you're going to be on the team anymore. You better you better have some foresight of the problems we're going to have, because this is not going to be all, sunshine and rainbows here. Like we deal in reality. Okay, so let's forecast those problems and what would be some contingencies to get past them, whether we hit them or not. Like, but at least it's in place. So now you got people thinking, look, we have a goal. We understand there's terrain that has to be covered, right? Some's going to be difficult. Some's going to be uphill, downhill, tree laden, rock laden, whatever that is. Like, we have to understand that. Now we can go forward. We're super aware, right? They're really focused on the outcome and the transition to get there. So I love what you're saying, because that's where they need to be. Yeah, what you did, good. We got that. That's why you're still in the meeting. Okay,
Hmm.
because you accomplished that stuff. So there's a reason you're here, because you already did your stuff. So you already told us in an email, whatever, that's great. So you're invited back. Okay. If you're an abysmal failure, achieve nothing, why would I bring you in the room? Okay. So I kind of have a little hardcore kind of approach to that, but like you gotta produce, So I love what you're
Yeah.
saying. I mean, that's what we have to focus on. I'm always about the doing, you know, what's
Yeah.
next? What's the next goal? What's the next strategy?
And I think part of how you get successful with that in an organization is it goes back to even how do you create those objectives, right? If it's the CEO sitting in their office deciding what the goals are for the next 12 months and then telling everybody what those
Yeah.
goals are for the next 12 months,
Disaster.
disaster. Pretty much guaranteed that that even your leadership team is going to be marching in different directions
Yeah.
and blaming each other for why
Yeah.
things are going wrong,
You
right?
got to have the buy-in. They
Exactly.
have to, if they don't feel they have any kind of contribution, you're just a taskmaster.
Right.
Okay. That is just, I mean, I don't,
100%.
I guess that might have worked sometime. And I bet even when it worked, it wasn't working well. Okay. But that mindset is not like we've come up with something unique. I mean, this is just core human nature stuff.
Yep.
How to get buy-in, how to build a team, how to have cohesiveness, how to, I mean, it's just one of those things that's not difficult. You just haven't
Yeah.
built a process for it.
Yeah. And when you do build a process for it, you find that, I mean, you're just so much more, as the CEO, you're so much more relaxed
Right.
because you can trust that people are aligned on what they need to be doing. People are focused on the objectives that matter the most to the organization. And you've included them in creating those objectives. So now they have ownership of
Right.
them.
Right.
And and it's also really important to understand, like particularly with your leadership team, that we win and lose as a team,
Right.
right? The problem with not including people in creating the plan, when the plan is brought down from on high, is now it's like every man for themselves.
Or they're just pointing upstairs.
Yeah,
He did, this was your plan.
right. It was your plan, not
This is
mine.
your fault.
Yeah,
I can't work with this guy. I mean,
yeah,
they do the whole thing. So
yeah.
I'm
But
with you
if you
there.
create that if you get people involved, you include them in the process, and then you create that mindset that we win and lose as a team, then all of a sudden it's kind of like magic
Yeah.
occurs within your leadership team because the people aren't fighting for their own turf anymore.
Right.
They're now
Right.
fighting for what they think is right for the business. So, like, as the
Right.
marketing person, I may want to hire people like to make my life easier and get my work done. But if we're sitting in a leadership team meeting and we have an objective coming up and it looks like it's really important that we add some more people in customer success or product or engineering or somewhere else in the organization,
that
if
take
it's every man
precedent.
for themselves, I'm
Yep.
fighting for my head count, right? And my budget. If it's we're a team and we're trying to get somewhere as a team, then I might understand that, hey, the needs of my department are not as important right now as
Right.
these other things. And I'm totally good with that because we win and lose as a team. This isn't about the performance of one individual area or one individual person.
Yeah. So let's take it to this as we kind of get ready to kind of put a bow on this whole thing. That's a really good segue into back to what we started with, selling your business, preparing for exit. When you have operations like that, where it's a team-minded culture, okay, and that's how the business has been running, how it runs. If I came there, I'd see that unity, I'd see that communication and all that kind of stuff. You're like, okay, this is legit because whether you like it or not, you're inheriting culture
Oh, yeah.
in a business. They're gonna do what they do. Okay, now you can come in and change it, and I'm gonna air quote change it, but you better be prepared for some attrition. Okay, people are gonna leave, they're gonna fight. It's ugly. Okay, so he's got to be very, very deliberate. But if you come in to acquire this company, like I'm the buyer, and I see this kind of harmony in this whole thing, and they understand it isn't tied to the founder, it's how the company operates. Like I'm gonna go, okay, I'm gonna keep that system for sure. Okay, because this is how come he runs because I want to give the founder a check, shake his hand, he's out the door, I'm in. I don't want to even know it's sold. Right. This it just
Hmm.
keeps humming. I mean, that's a high valued business. That's when you're getting your multiples, you're getting everything else because people can come and go. I can just come in and like sit for a day and just observe. I don't have to come
Hmm.
into absolute chaos. So is that I mean, I'm sure you've seen the gamut from
Yeah.
one end to the
Yeah.
other.
Totally. If you want to get a great multiple, by a strategic buyer, let's say, that is, I mean, of course, I'm sure you can get it done without that, but that's a critical piece in my mind, and it really, really makes a massive difference in the way your organization is perceived, the kind of valuation you're going to get, and frankly, like your performance is going to be a lot stronger as
Right.
well because you're not wasting time and energy on things that aren't aligned with your main objectives. And that tends to be what happens when you don't foster alignment within your team and you don't include your team in the process of creating goals and objectives, right? And that's really true throughout the organization, right? One of the keys to improving your retention rates is making sure that everybody as far down as you can get in the organization has a connection to those top level objectives
Yep.
so
Yep.
that they can feel like what they do every day is contributing to this larger objective. So they feel like they're part of the team too. The classic example was, I think it was JFK was at NASA, ran into a janitor in the hallway and asked the janitor, what are you doing? And what do you do? And the janitor says, well, I'm helping to put a man on the moon.
Right.
Right? That's what you want, right? You want to get people attached to what those big goals are
Right.
because that's what we care about, right? As we as human beings, like, okay, the money's great, I need it to pay the bills and all that stuff, but where I really get like personal satisfaction, self-actualization, if you will, is through accomplishment and through being a part of something that's bigger than yourself
Yeah.
and feeling that every day. And if you can create that kind of culture in your business, one, you're going to be a lot happier. You're going to be
Right.
surrounded by much happier people. And you're not going to have to worry about whether someone's doing their job or not, or motivated or not, because they will self-motivate.
Yeah, it's so good. I like to put it as how are they the hero in the journey, that part of the journey? How do you make them, you show them how you're the hero without you, without the janitor, we don't get to the moon.
Right.
All right. Like no one's thinking that way. Right. But how do you instill that's the cultural aspect, right? But people need to know why they matter in the process. And it doesn't matter the size, however simple or however complex that their position is, they all they're necessary. And that's the key, what you're saying. I think it boils down to that. And because they solve problems, they communicate right. They understand the vision.
Mhm.
They have a mission. They're on this stuff and all together. It's really, really powerful. So that's awesome. And I think if people, even if they're not thinking about selling right now, which I always advise from day one, you think about selling. Because if you think about selling, you'll build your business to sell, and you know what you're going to have? A really well-run business. Okay, you're going to get all the things you want because your intention is everything we talked about. You'll be doing from the get-go. Imagine what a business look like 5, 7, 10 years from now. It'll be you'll have people approaching you to purchase your business, because it's run so well. So, yeah, final thoughts. Those were pretty good, but let's give me a couple more things and we'll wrap. You can tell people they can get in touch with you and all the good stuff.
Yeah, I just we've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
a lot of great areas. I would go back and just underscore, the conversation that we had around emotion and what actually drives the way that we make decisions. And that is an important insight to take throughout all aspects of your business, right? What we've just been talking about, team alignment and culture, okay, that's part of it, right? That's the same, it's getting at the same thing. It's the emotional attachment to something that's bigger than yourself, right? You get into the buyer journey. Okay, what is your onboarding process? Because people need to feel value pretty quickly. And if they don't, or if it's too difficult for them to start to use your product, how are you making it really easy? Have you thought about what are the things that we really need a buyer to do in the first 90 days? Have you gone to them before they even sign the contract with a roadmap? It's like, hey, here's what our first 90 days is going to look like. And you've got it laid out and you're going to get to this point, right? It's really critical that you create those kind of intentional experiences throughout your business because they tend, like, you do a good job in onboarding. One, your retention rates are going to improve. Two, you're more likely to be able to expand those contracts and add on additional things, right? If you don't, chances are pretty good they're going to churn.
Right. Right. Awesome. Awesome. Rich, what a great conversation. I knew we could do it. I had no doubts. It's been fantastic. How can people reach out to you, get in touch? Maybe they want to talk to you about, helping them prepare for exit or whatever that might be. Where do they go?
Well, the easiest way to find me is my website. It's richmsmith.com. Also, on there's a link to schedule time with me, and you can read a little bit more about what we do. I write a weekly blog. You can link to it there. And I mean, if you find that content interesting or things we've talked about today, please subscribe to it. I also have my own podcast called Revenue Science, and it's available everywhere, all the major podcast platforms, so Apple, Spotify, et cetera. And again, I would encourage your listeners to check it out. And if you like it, please subscribe, because it helps us get our message out a little bit wider.
Awesome. Awesome. Rich, well, thank you again for the time today. Really, really appreciate it. Great conversation. Loved it. I love good quality conversations. That's what our podcast is all about in the realm of business. So you are definitely a plus, and I appreciate it. And
Well,
for
thank you so
everybody
much.
else, yeah, you're welcome. And for everybody else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast. Thanks for joining me on the Sharpen the Spear podcast. If you're a manufacturing executive and you're serious about unlocking hidden profit, improving frontline leadership, and taking control of your floor, go to grit2lead.com right now. Run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator and discover your biggest opportunities are hiding. Don't leave millions on the table. Sharpen your spear lead from the front, and win the floor. Until next time, stay sharp.